All right, what's up? Let's break down Dolla's new remix called New Gold. And I heard this track once in the car, and I loved it. This is probably definitely my favorite Dolla track. So let's go ahead and dive in and check it out. I do know it follows the HD2 formula. The HD2 formula is the arrangement layout or format that 95% of top tracks will follow. It's definitely the most powerful psychologically arrangement kind of framework to follow, and it's very simple. And before we play, let me just break it down really quick. It's just 7 parts. Okay, we've got the intro, we've got a bass drop, we've got a break 1, we've got a hook drop, we've got the main break and build, we've got hook drop 2, and then we have the outro. Okay, so intro, bass drop, break 1, hook drop 1, main break and build, hook drop and 2, hook drop 2, and outro. All right, so let's check it out. So one thing that's different about this track is that they're starting off the bat with a lot of things are going on in this intro, and that's very that's uncommon. Okay, but when you've got a huge scale like Dolla, you could do whatever you want, right? But yeah, like if you're like an up and coming producer and you sent this to a label, they're like, it just makes it harder for DJs to play. So if they're going to be distributing your music and your music is off the bat difficult to play, then it's like, come on, dude. That's pretty much what they're going to be thinking. You're making your own job and the other people's jobs harder. But if you're Dolla, you could do whatever you want because you're going to be playing it in your sets, and other people are going to play it regardless. So that's just a difference to kind of think about. But the intro, which you typically want to do, is just make it easy, DJ friendly, so just beats. Okay, but again, this one, a lot of stuff kind of off the bat. Okay, so right here, we're still going through the intro. And then right here, he has a little vocal come in. I call that an intro hook tease. So what you would like to do, which is very typical in the intro, you just tease the hook. Just give him a little bite of the hook, and then we're going to move into what I call the bass drop. The bass drop is where you drop the bass line for the first time. And so here, through the intro, typically what you want to do is you just want to introduce the beats, okay, and then have an intro hook tease, right? Those two things are like the most important things to check off, and keep it simple. Drop the intro hook tease, get into the bass line, okay? Boom, so there we go, we're getting the bass line. Okay, so with the bass drop, the main goal, when you drop the bass line, the main goal here is just to teach people how to move and groove to the track before you start throwing hooks on top of it, okay? And here, that's what we're getting. He's dropping pretty much just, there's some ambient kind of things, some incidentals going on, and you can hear that. Some people call that ear candy and freak out about it. Don't freak out about it. Just pay attention to making sure you're doing the big things, all right? And the big things so far, intro, keep it simple with the beats. Intro hook tease, we get into the bass drop, just drop the bass line, And with the bass drop section, it's usually 16 bars, okay, and that's what it's going to be for this track, okay? So 16 bars. And the first 8 bars, just give them the bass line. Teach people how to move and groove to your track. And then in the second 8 bars, what you do is you want to start pulling people towards the next section, which is going to be the break, okay? And you do that by typically previewing, teasing what's going to come in the break section, Okay. And so what is going to come in the brake section? In the brake section over here, what you typically want to do, this is where you're going to start introducing the main hook of your track. Okay. The main hook of your track. And so the bass drop introduces the main groove of your track. And the brake is going to take that groove away. Okay. It's going to usually high pass. And it's going to introduce the main hook of your track. So introduce the main groove. Introduce the main hook. And then when we get over to the hook drop 1, those two come together. We put the main hook over the main groove. Okay, and that's what we're going to see here. Okay, because this is the most effective kind of arrangement format for tracks, and yeah. Let's just keep listening. So you can hear the music come up on the sides. You can hear the vocal coming up down the middle. And they're teasing it because they're not giving it away full, right? They're not blowing their load, okay? So instead what they're doing is they're teasing by repping it, okay? So that vocal is repeating up. So that's a very, very common thing and technique to do, is just to rep that vocal up. Boom. Perfect. Okay, so what do we got going on here? We're entering into break 1. So we did intro, bass drop, and then now we're in break 1. So let's just review. Intro, simple beats. That's what you typically want to do. He's got a lot going on. Forget about that. So simple beats, and then intro hook tease. He has given us an intro hook tease. Boom, and then he explodes into the bass drop. Drop the bass line. Teach people how to move and groove to your track. Then in the B section of your bass drop, start pulling people towards the break. Okay. Now when we're in the break, what do we need to do? Number 1, we want to give people a break. Okay, give me a break. Give me a break. And so the way that you do that is you take away the low end of the groove typically, and with a high pass. Right, so you high pass the low end. Now, one important thing, a mistake that a lot of producers make here, is they'll do what I call like a cliff dive. A cliff dive is when they're in the bass drop and then they just pretty much drop into nothing, or like a hook or something. But at this stage of the track, you want to keep that groove going. You still want people to move. This is early. It's too early to kill the energy. This is where you want kind of to, you're warming people up still. Okay, so keep that groove going. You can, like, over the course of the break, you can kind of fade the groove down, or however you want to do that. But you want to just kind of keep it going. Keep that momentum going on the dance floor especially. You don't want to kill the energy of your track before it's even really started, okay? So, but let's step back. So we're in break 1. What are we going to do here? Number 1, give them a break. Number 2, introduce something new or different, okay? In other words, introduce the main hook of the track, okay? You want something new. You want that thing to stand out, something to stand out. And so what we got here is now we get the full vocal. Perfect, right? So we give them a break. We've got that new thing, that big thing. We've got the main hook, okay? 2 other things that we can do in the breaks. 1, create a sense of atmosphere. And 4 is, so that was number 3. Number 4 is build, okay? And then build's going to be over here, so build tension. So let's see how this plays out. So the sense of atmosphere is created by those pads, and you can just feel like there's a nice depth and background to the mix, and so that's the feeling of atmosphere. That's really important in break sections. It's not like necessary. There's actually a track that's just so dry in the break, but I'm trying to remember what it is, and I'm sorry for even bringing it up, but I can't remember. But most of the time, dude, just like get a little atmosphere in the track, in the breaks. That's what it is. It creates that open feeling. It creates that kind of... functionally, what it does is it starts to push the mix back from the front, so it feels further away. It has a little bit of depth. And then when the drops come back in, that atmosphere goes away, and then boom, it just goes right back to the front. So pretty simple. I mean, it's just a break. We've got the new hook. It's over a high pass groove, and now what we're going to do is probably start building a little bit of tension. Okay, there we go. What are we doing? Okay, we've got a snare roll. We've got this new kind of percussion thing going boop, 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 boop. Okay, that's repeating, so that's building a little bit of tension. We got a vocal repetition. Disappear, disappear, disappear. All these things, these repetitions, the snare roll, these are all building tension. Okay, you can hear those drums kind of start to thin out. And now we're getting the payoff. Okay. Okay, let me back up really quick. Okay, so when we're building tension, there's 5 parts of a build for me. A build section. Okay, a build section. And so those 5 parts of a build section are rep, roll, rise, grow, and what I call a pipo. And we'll talk about that in a second. But rep is just a hook repetition. So disappear, disappear, disappear. There you go, repetition. Roll could be a kick roll. Snare rolls most of the time what it is. Kick roll comes up a lot in Chris Lake's tracks if you just want a reference for that. But most of the time it's a snare roll. Okay, so here we have a rep. We've got a roll. Next is rise, so any kind of rising feeling. So like a riser is an on-the-nose kind of rise thing. Another way that you could rise the energy is by opening up a filter on like a synth or something like that. That's another way to rise the energy. Another way to rise the energy is, let's say like you have a snare roll, and the snare roll starts pitching up. That's another way to kind of rise. And it's always fun to do that. It's always fun to take certain elements of a build and have them serve multiple roles of building tension. Okay, but we have the rep, roll, rise, grow. We talked about that, expanding the space, pushing that mix back and back and back so that it explodes when the drop comes in. And then finally is the pipo. Pipo is pattern, interrupt, pay off. Okay, and the pattern that we're building here is the building pattern. We're building tension in our brains, right? Dopamine is just building up. It's just building up. It's just building up. And then all of a sudden the producer just cuts it, just stops it, right? And that's alarming. That's a good word, actually. Alarming for our brain, because it's just like, what just happened, right? It wakes us up. You've got their full attention when you do that. When you've got that build pattern, our brains can't help but just build up that dopamine. It's tension, right? We feel it viscerally. We can't help it. And then when you just cut that off, it's that flight or fight response, and we just freeze. You've got our full attention. And when you've got their full attention, deliver a little bit of a payoff and then explode into the drop. You want people just focused when you get into your track, all right? And so listen, okay? So listen to the build. We got the disappear. We've got the snare roll. We've probably got some growing and some rising and all that stuff. But listen to how that tension gets cut, and then we get the payoff, and then we go in. Okay, so PIPO stands for pattern, interrupt, pay off. So we interrupt the build pattern, we deliver a payoff, and then we explode into the drop. So listen to how that plays out. To the inner Tesla, partner X wrestler, he days for Cheska, partner X wrestler. That is nasty, that freaking synth right there. So I would call that an entry. So now we're in hook drop 1. Okay, so let's back up. So we've done the intro, we've done the bass drop, we've done break 1. Now we're entering into HD1, hook drop 1. And it's called hook drop because we put the hooks over the groove, okay? All right. So we haven't gotten the full hooks yet, and that's okay, because what happens is we just had a lot of hooks over here, but now we're just getting back into the groove, and now he has these other interesting hooks on it. So the main hook isn't in here yet, but we've got these interesting kind of synth sounds playing as entries, also playing at the 4-bar mark. Okay, a little vocal there at the end of the 8-bar section. Okay, another entry. Now, an important thing about the hook drops, the most important thing about hook drops is putting hooks over the groove. Okay, put the hooks over the groove. Another second important thing about hook drops is an A-B structure. So you have an A section and a B section. And so what I'm listening for right now is, as the track is unfolding, is this A section is defined by these synths. Whatever that is, right? That's the A section. But that's gonna but then we're gonna move into a section. So in the second 8 bars, I'm expecting, I'm sorry, for the B section, I'm expecting something else to happen. And my guess is, I mean, especially if I was doing this too, I would bring the vocal back, okay? But then you have a clean A-B section. You have an A with a strong identity. It's just groove with these interesting kind of synths, right? And then you have, or those kind of bow synths. And then you have the B section, which will have a strong identity, which is probably going to be the vocals. I don't quite remember. I just remember really liking this track, knowing that it just follows the principles, the proven principles of the HD2 formula. And so let's see what happens. Ooh, a little bit of a lift there. Okay, so that ride right there is a nice lift. So here you don't hear that ride. So in this 8 bars. Okay, but then when we get into the 8 bar section, it's pretty much the same thing, right? We're getting those kinds of synths, but we're going to take the energy to the next level by introducing a lift element, and that is going to be a ride. That is the most on-the-nose way to lift the energy, is by just adding a 909 ride. Okay, a little vocal there at the end of the 8 bars again. So kind of recycling that. I really like that. And then now we're going to should be entering into the B section. Not sure what it's going to be. Let's find out. Boom, we're getting the vocal. Okay, so exactly what I expect. And at this point, like, I really think my intuition is on point. So when I hear something that just kind of breaks my expectations, most of the time it's like, what's going on there, you know? And that's really how, like, the feedback, what's based on. Like, as I listen to this, like, I pretty much know a lot of times what's going to happen, how it's going to play out. The exciting thing is how they do it. What is this producer bringing to the table? Like, most of the time, the top tracks are always going to follow the same formula. Why? Not because they're just copying each other, but because this is the most effective way and the most powerful way psychologically to unfold an idea over time. Okay, that's why it's just extremely effective. It leverages tension and relief and release in an interesting way. Don't want to go too deep into that now. What I want to point out is, like, that my intuition is tuned in, so that, you know, I expect something is going to happen here. And the interesting thing again is the way that it's done, the execution of it, you know. And so here we got that clean A-B is what I'm saying. We've got the clean A section with the groove and those synths. So sound design and then vocal, right? So look at the contrast. We've got a clean A section, clean B section, sound design in the A, vocal in the B. That describes so many tracks, I can't even count them, okay? But, yeah. But again, it's all about how this is executed. The unique groove sound, the unique vocal sound, the unique synth sounds. Just this execution is really cool. Okay. So now we're in the last 8 bar section. Okay, what's going to happen? Probably the vocal's going to continue, but what I'm expecting is something to pull us into the next section. Okay, so now we're going to enter into the main break and build, where we really break things down and then we build them back up. But I want something to pull me in to that section. Okay, just like in the bass drop, something's pulling us in to the first break. I want to know in this last 8 bar section, what is going to help us transition. Okay, I call this a trans element. What's going to help us transition into that next section. Okay, it's kind of similar to what we were talking about with lifts. So with the first 8 bars of the A section here, cool, we got the synths, we've got the groove, awesome. We're going to play that again, okay, but what else are we going to do? How are we going to lift the energy? And in this case, he did it in the most straightforward, on the nose way, which is just add a ride. Okay, so we're just chilling over here, so I call this a chill section, and then a lift. All right, And then now we're in the B section. We're going to have the chill section of the B section, which is what? It's just going to be the vocal over the groove. That's just the chill section. We're just chilling. We're just listening to the vocal over the groove. But now when we get into the last, okay, we can look for a lift. There probably won't be a lift. It's pretty, we've got that nice ride on top. But what we can look out for is a transition sound into the next section. All right. And so what I'm describing right now are what I call CLT stories: chill, lift, and trans. And chill, lift, and trans describe kind of the three emotional states, or the three states that any 8-bar section can kind of be in. So we can have a chill section, right? That's where we just have like a hook over a groove. And then we have a lift section. That's where we have the hook over the groove, but we're adding in a sound, a lift element, a specific lift element that lifts the energy. Okay. And so the A section right here is very simple. It's chill and then lift. Chill and then lift. Okay, that's it. Just those two things. And then in the B section, that's what I'm looking out for. I'm always looking out for these very natural developing things. And these are what always happen. And that's why these things always happen, is because they tell a very natural story, and they really manipulate the emotional emotions of the listener in a very direct way, but pleasing way, right? So this was cool. I liked it, but if I'm going to listen to it again, I want to be elevated, and so that's what that ride does. It serves a function psychologically, okay, and that's why all these things are timeless. They come up again and again and again, but it's how you do it that makes it special, right? And so yeah, we're talking about CLT stories. And so now what I'm looking for is the transition element, okay? And so that's what I'm looking for over here. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, but if it was me, what I would do is I'd probably bring those pads up again, okay? So we did not get a trans element. That's okay. Let's see what happens in the next 8 bars, then we'll talk about it. Okay, so this is interesting. This is different. So here we're getting a new section. So we have an A section and a B section, and that's most of the time what happens. But now we're going to get this like almost third section, and I hate to call it a C section, but you know, that's, if we're going to follow the terms and the labels, that's what we have to call it. So here you have a C section, which is like a rap over the vocal, and so that's interesting. Typically what you would find here is either just moving into the main break and build through a high pass, or what you would do is go into what I call a strip section. A strip section is where you take away the drums, but you still have the kick, the bass, and the hook on top. Okay, but here, what it seems like Dolla wanted to do was keep the energy going. He really liked this rap vocal thing, and so he wanted to just put it here and just have the drums going. So this is a unique execution, just a little bit different than what you would usually find. But that explains why here we're not quite seeing a transition element, because we're not quite transitioning to the main break and build yet. But in this C section here, maybe we will get that trans. But we're still getting hooks over the groove, okay? We're still getting hooks over the groove, and everything is still highly organized. We've got that clean A section, clean B section, and now we have the makes of a clean C section.
Running to the reverend says it's been a while. I'm running in the rando. She's a social scandal. Running to the reverend says it's been a while. I'm new to the spot. I want to review a whole lot of everything, but nothing to do. Brother in a Tesla, partner ex-wrestler. He stays for Cheska, partner ex-wrestler. Everything but nothing to do. Brother in a Tesla, partner ex-wrestler.
So you can hear the music very gently come up here. A little bit of atmosphere starting to come up. So that's a trance. That's as small as you can be, but it's there. You know what I mean? It's there. That's the point. It's not so much, how should I put this? Like all the things that we're talking about, all the things I talk about in the Pro Track breakdowns, I call them the 80%. I won't go too deep into that here because I go deep into it elsewhere. I know, especially in the Drugs from Amsterdam breakdown, and also the Tra breakdown, I talk a lot about the 80-20. But what I'm saying here is like it just matters that you do these things. Just matters that you do these things, and how you do them. That's where it gets fun, creative, and special. But check off the boxes, but do them in your own way. Okay, and so that's what we're getting here. So yeah, we got that little tiny trans element. Just helped us pull us in, gave us a little bit of gravity into the next section. Okay. So now we're in a high pass. We're in a break section. We've got some nice music. It's atmospheric. It's a little bit lower energy. Okay, cool. So now we're getting into the vocals. So the vocals coming in on top of all this stuff, and then we're going to get into the build. Okay, cool. Nice little string there just to add a little bit of tension, also just kind of fill things in. Okay, build. So very similar to before, we got that interesting kind of perk thing. Okay. The thing is almost like a countdown to me. That's what it makes me think of. It's just almost like a countdown. Okay, but what do we got? We got the rep with the vocal and that little perk thing. Maybe that's a rep. We got the roll. Okay, do we have a rise yet or a grow yet? I don't think not yet. Okay, so this one is just kind of shrinking. Interesting. So now we're still getting the pipo though, because the snare cuts and then we go into the vocal.
Express the heat days for chest, good partner, express yo.
So a little bit different. We didn't get that chop before. So a little bit of an elevation. So one of the things that producers always want to know about is how do I make a drop like HD2, for example, bigger than or more developed than HD1. And a lot of the times it's really just making sure you're keeping the same underlying hook structure, but then you can add elevating sounds. So for example, a ride, like you could just chuck a ride on top. That's one thing you do. Another thing, like you could do little you could add hooks, right? So you can start putting hooks in between other hooks. So here we have these kind of synths that kickstart the entry, and then we have the synth at the 4-bar mark. But now he's giving us some kind of chops as well, you know? So it's just a sound that's added to what's already there. So we're getting what we wanted. So they gave us something that we liked, and we're going to get it again. But now it's elevated a little bit because he's just adding sounds on top. Okay, so here, I don't know if he's going to change it up right here or just go back to this. But for this next 16 bars, I wonder if he's going to bring back the vocal, right? So we're still going to get that clean A section, clean B section. Oh, that's interesting. So there's a couple interesting changes here. So let's listen back over here. So that gets cut off at 2 bars. And I think what happens here is these synths play for 4 bars. They get cut off, and then the vocal comes in on the second 4 bars. Let's check that out. Boom, that's what happens. So that's really interesting. So this is actually a rare example of a track that actually kind of develops HD2 in a big way compared to HD1. Most of the time, and this is a best practice to be honest, is to have HD1 and HD2 very similar. But there are things you could do to elevate HD2, like adding in elevation sounds like rides, like making the punks more dramatic, but here, this is an interesting example where something different is really being done. Similar sounds, so they're still within the same ballpark, but there's a big difference. And so in this first 8 bars here, and the A section over here, we're getting a synth that plays as the entry, okay, and that plays for 2 bars. Then we're getting that same synth, maybe a little modified a little bit, but same synth played on the 4 bar mark that also plays for 2 bars. Okay, and that's it. So there's no vocal. So we just get 2 little passages of the synth.
Let's go.
Okay, and a little P8 vocal there, a little vocal at the 8 bar mark. So here, what is different is now these synths are going to play for 4 bars, and they get cut off, and the vocal chop is going to come in. And so that is a different structure, a completely different structure than the first 8. So that's really cool. This is rare. You don't see this that often, so that's why I'm excited about it. And yeah.
Let's go.
That's so sick. That's so sick. And then that vocal comes back. All right. So, man, you can see how excited I am because it's just subtle. It's subtle. He's still using the same sounds. He's not completely throwing the rules of his track out the window. He's just doing a subtle variation, right? That it's almost hard to pick up on if you're not really paying attention. But it's enough to keep it interesting. Now, if he just went back and did this, would that have worked? I don't know. I like this. I really do. I like this developing move. That's really cool. Just making HT2 a little bit different, at least in the first 16 bars, than HT1. And then we're just going to move into the vocal, right? Because we got to put that big hook over the big groove. Just listening now, same as before. I just want to listen if there's going to be a trans to the outro, or what I would call a settle to the outro. So a trans is just anything that helps you transition, and you can transition up like a riser that builds tension, or you can transition down like a downshifter, right? That helps you settle the energy. And the thing about effects, like an up effect, like okay, those are explicitly communicating what the energy level is that the producer wants you to feel. Right? So if the riser's going up, energy level's going up. But as we go to the outro, sometimes I like to listen for like transitions down, or I call trans down, like a settling the energy. All right. Let me give you an example of this really quick. It's in a new track. Let's go to the top track. And it's by Kevin McKay, Glasgow Underground. It's called Work. And this is just probably now one of my favorite examples of this idea. Where are you? Here we go. And a really cool track. Surprised it's not high. It was released last week. And I hope to see it go higher, because this is a really cool track. Really well done. And the vocal is so... I'm surprised to see it not go higher, but tracks are really good these days. So let's play this really quick. And I'm showing you the example of what settling is. And the cool thing about this track is that the B section of this track, the B section of Work, just is a big percussion motif that settles at the end. So there's a low pass down on it. So it settles the energy. And that happens at the end of HD1, happens at the end of HD2. Check it out. Okay, so you hear that big percussion thing. Now, as we approach the end of the second 8 bars here, you're going to hear that start to low pass down. And that is a great example of settling the energy. Into the break, okay? You didn't see my hands the first time, but anyway, yeah, it goes into the break. And so now into the outro as well, he does that as well. Let's check this out, maybe around here. Now, the thing I like about this outro is that he keeps settling it down. So before, when we would go into the break, he would cut it, but it was a creative and interesting choice to keep the sound in and keep going down. So that's fun. Anyway, just wanted to point that out. But the important thing is that settling. I just wanted you to give the feel of it. So in this track, I was just curious, is there going to be a kind of settling as we go into the outro? Just, not exactly in that way. It doesn't necessarily need to be a low pass down like that, but something that indicates or communicates to the listener that we're settling down into the outro. So the answer is no. Cool. And so now we're just getting into the outro. It's pretty much going to be what I call a boring outro, which is going to be groove and then beats. This little vocal here is more of a percussion thing. The brum, brum. Okay, with, the fast delay. Yeah, that's just more of a percussion thing. It's just more part of the groove. It's not really a hook, not like this, right? Okay, that's what I call a star hook, right? Because it's just a star taking over the show. But this little guy is just more of a percussion thing, just adding a little bit of vocal texture to the groove. And the reason why I'm even saying that, I'm not even sure if I mentioned it, but when you get into the outro, it's just about making it easy for the DJ, just like we were talking about the intro. But here in the outro, make it easier for the DJ, right? We don't need to have crazy hooks over the groove in the outro. The outro is for the DJs. It's not for you showing off. You could show off through here, HD1, MBB, HD2. Right? But in the outro, just make it for the DJ. Boring outro, groove, and then break down to the beats. Okay, so that's the type of stuff I actually do like, though. Like when you have that little vocal at the end of 8 bars, that's pretty cool. And the reason why I like that is because that actually gives the DJ a point where he can cut into something else. Like it sets up a transition, and then boom, you could just drop it into another track. And so cool. So now we're just getting into beats. So cool. This track is really cool because it's just another good example of what I call the 80-20. The 80-20 is the 80 is just checking off the boxes, right? We're using the HD2 formula, the intro. The intro is a little bit convoluted in this track, because when you're Dom Dolla, you could do whatever you want, and you should. But if you're kind of an aspiring producer looking to get signed, especially early on, then you just want to make things as easy for yourself as possible and give yourself the highest likelihood of actually getting signed. And that's just making sure that the intro is easy to play. Like, right? So easy. You don't need to be as a star or show off in the intro either. All right? But just, keep it simple through the intro. And then intro hook tease. And then move into the bass drop. All right, and now I'm pretty much describing what this whole track is. You move into the bass drop, teach them the bass line. When you get into the B section of the bass line of the bass drop, then start to tease into the break. When you get into the break, make sure you actually give them a break, right? But keep the groove going, just high pass it. introduce that new thing or different thing. So in other words, the main hook, create a little bit of atmosphere, okay, in the break, and then build a little bit of tension with rep, roll, rise, grow, and pipo. Okay, so now we're moving into HD1. What is HD1? What's he doing? Okay, he's putting hooks over the groove. Yes. Okay, hooks over the groove. And that is the sound design stuff, the meow, that thing. And in HD1, he had those playing on the entry and then at the 4. And that went on for 16 bars because we have the A-B sections of the drops. So in the A section, we got those cool sound design things playing on the entries and then on the 4. And then in the B section of the drop, we also got the big vocal. So putting the main hook over the main groove. That's awesome. Okay, so simple A-B. A with the sound design, B with the vocal. And then the unique thing about this track and is putting that rap over where you would normally find like a strip section. But the reason why, and I understand, why he kept it going, is if you're going to put that rap over a strip section, it just wouldn't have the right amount of energy. So the drums kept going in there to match the level of energy of the rap section. And okay. And so then, but what we're still doing now is we're starting to break things down as we get into the main build. And so one thing I didn't talk about too much, I don't think. It's hard to remember what I talk about in all these videos. But with the break section, what you're looking for is a V-taper. You're looking to kind of bring that in not a break section, but specifically the main break and build, a V-taper. You're starting to bring that energy level down. You hit the basement of the track, the lowest energy point, and that's where you work up to the highest point, okay? And so what we got here is he's starting to break that energy down, okay? And then once you have that kind of energy kind of chilled out, then, a lot of times you could bring in that main hook again. So he has that main hook play for 16 bars, and then we get into an 8-bar build section with the rep, roll, rise, grow, and pipo, okay? I'm not sure if all those elements were there, but, those are the 5 kind of elements of a build section: rep, roll, rise, grow, and pipo. All right, and then we get into the main to HD2. And the interesting thing about this track, well, before we get to that, what do we do in HD2? We put the hooks over the groove. Okay. Another thing you want to do in the drops HD2 is always think about A section, B section, clean A, clean B. Okay, and we get that. Okay, so in the A section, this is where it's a little bit unique and different from HD1. Okay, so in the A section, we have the same synths that were playing in HD1, but now they're playing for 4 bars and they get cut off, and then the vocal chop comes in, and that happens for 16 bars. Okay, so that's a little bit of fun and interesting thing, different than HD1. In the B section, then we get the full vocal, and then we get the boring outro. Okay, but the interesting thing is, like, this is just checking off the boxes, right? It's just doing it in its own way, its unique way, and that's what makes it cool and special and creative. And it's at the top of the chart, so it's not any surprise at all to see that this is following the HD2 formula, because the HD2 formula just very simply tells the most powerful story psychologically for the listener. And let me just walk through that really quickly, because we talked about the HD2 formula right off the bat, and so let's talk a little bit now about why it's so powerful. But the idea is, the bottom line is just the psychology of expectation, just tension and release. Okay, so when we get into the bass drop, we're just introducing the groove character. Then we take away that groove character, we introduce the hook character. And so at this point, the listener knows the groove character, they know the hook character, but they haven't yet come together. So that creates a little bit of tension. Couple that with the tension that you build over here, and then you see how HD1 is really a resolution of those two tensions. Okay, when you have all that tension, like all that stuff is teasing the groove, but the listener knows that they need that hook and groove to come together. So that's what HD1 is all about: putting the hooks over the groove, but specifically putting these hooks from break 1 over this groove from the bass drop. Okay, that's what I call the HD1 equation. The HD1 equation is bass drop plus break 1 equals HD1. Okay, and so that's why it's so powerful, is because it's releasing that inherent tension of introducing the groove character and introducing the hook character independently, separately. The listener wants them to come together. That's the kind of implicit promise that you're making through these two sections. Okay, you're introducing the characters of the story, then they finally come together and the story really begins. Okay, but right off the bat, you can see how that is just psychology of expectations, just tension, release. Okay, that's why it's powerful. That's why it happens again and again and again, and will continue to happen again and again and again. Then in HD1, again, that's where the story really begins, the HD2 story. And it's very simple. It's a 3-act story, just like a Hollywood movie, okay? You've got the hook, you've got the build, you've got the payoff. Okay, that's the exact same thing as a Hollywood story too. But with the first act in HD1, HD1 is the first act. And this is where you give them the hook. So we're putting the hooks over the groove. You give them what they want, okay? So hook, build, payoff. Another way to talk about that is give them what they want. Take it away. That's going to build tension. And then give it back to them. That's going to pay off that tension. Okay? So hook, build, payoff. Okay? Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Okay? In other words, give them what they want. Take it away. Give it back to them. Okay? And so that's exactly what we have here. And that's why this is so powerful. Because I've talked about this so many times now in videos, but I never know, like, I don't expect everybody to watch these videos, so I repeat a lot of it again and again. But what I wanted to say was, I totally forgot. So we have the HD2 story here with giving them what they want, take it away, and then bring it back. And so what I wanted to say, I remember, is it's like a 2-year-old. Okay? Here you give them a toy and they like it. You know what? Let's actually expand this. I haven't done this before. So here, in the beginning, it's like a kid sees a toy at the toy store. They want it. They want it. They don't have it. They want it. Okay? Then the parent buys it for them, and then they give the toy to the kid. The kid's so happy here in HD1. He's so happy. Then the parent takes the toy away. The kid's crying, right? He's building tension. I want my toy back. I want my toy back. The parent gives the toy back to the kid. The kid's happy. Okay? That is really as sophisticated as the psychology of a tech house track or a house track. That's the psychology of the HD2 formula. And that's not disparaging at all. That's just extremely effective. It's extremely powerful. It's just tension and release. Okay, tension through here, release that tension. Okay, take that away. That's going to immediately build tension. You take it away, you're getting tension. And then you just amplify. You just feed into that tension and that craving that you've created. Because here, when you give them HD1, you literally hook them. Remember, hook, build, payoff. You hook them. Okay, it's like being hooked on drugs. Okay, and then when you take that away, they got that craving. No, I want that. That's what happens in our brains. Our brains are freaking out. Like, no, I want that back. I want that back. Right? And then what you're doing with all the build elements, the rep, roll, rise, and grow, you're just amplifying that tension. You're just blowing it up. You're just promising in an extreme way that you're gonna give it back to them. That's what's going on. It's extremely powerful psychologically. And then finally in HD2, you give it back to them and they're happy. Okay? And then then the song's done. Okay? You give it back to them. They're happy. Yes, I got it back. I love it. I love this. This is so good. And then the DJ is ready to mix into the next track. And so you can see like everything I've just described is kind of the higher level of the HD2 formula. But it's also why the HD2 formula is so powerful and why it shows up again and again and again and again and again, right? Because it's just leveraging basic 2-year-old psychology, right? And again, this is not saying anything bad. Like when I make tracks, that's the only thing I'm thinking about. How can I check off the boxes of the HD2 formula? The point is that to do it in your way, right? Your execution of it, the sounds you choose, the hooks you choose, the way you build tension, the way you pay off that tension, right? That's what's going to be cool. That's what's special. That's what's going to be interesting. And so just checking off the boxes, but doing it in your own way, okay? And I said I wasn't going to go into the 80-20, but that's the 80. So checking off the boxes is the 80%. 20% is what you bring to the table as a producer, okay? And so, yeah, that's it. And so this is just another good example of that. And I personally really love the sound of this track. This is my favorite Dom Dolla track. And that comes from the 20. It comes from the 20. There's times when, people use the HD2 formula, but I hate the track. I don't like it, right? Because the 20 isn't connecting with me, right? But this one in particular does. Anyway, but that's the whole point of these videos, is walking through these tracks, looking at extracting kind of the techniques, but at this point now it's just kind of showing over and over and over how everyone's doing the same thing every time in the top tracks, the most powerful tracks, and then just giving another example of it, and now just kind of focusing on the little details. That's it with this one. If you got any questions, leave them down below. If you've got any comments that you want to add to what I've talked about, leave them down below. And I will see you in the next breakdown. Peace.